Okay, here we go. Hi, everyone. I am Katie Sanford, and I am here with Ann Zadeh, who is running for mayor of Fort Worth. And she has agreed to give us some of her time today just to tell us a little about herself, her vision for Fort Worth, some things that she's faced being a woman running in this race, and just growing herself. And so, thank you so much, Ann, for being here today.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invitation and the opportunity.
Yes, we are so excited to talk with you. So let's start with just you telling us a little about you. How did you get here? Tell us a little about Ann.
Okay. Well, people often ask me because I'm currently the city council representative for District 9. So I've been in elected office since 2014. And often the question I get is, did you have a drive to do this? Is this what you went to school to do? Is this something that you've always known you wanted to do? And the answer is truly no. I never thought that I would run for political office. And it wasn't until folks who really saw that I knew kind of how things got done at the city and could answer questions about who to go to in the city to answer their questions about city services and that sort of thing. And my own kind of involvement in my own neighborhood, that people started suggesting that I should be on the city council. So in 2014, I had been serving on the zoning commission for a number of years, and that term came to an end. They have term limits on the zoning commission. So I'd been appointed to that body, and I'd served for 6 years. And when that came to an end, people had started suggesting other things that I might do. And one of the things that came up when the council member in this seat before me decided to step down in the middle of a term was an open seat to serve District 9. So I decided to run at that time just because people had been suggesting that I do so. So that race was a special election in an off-season, cycle. And there were 6 candidates in that race, which was a crowded field at the time. Now being in a mayoral race with 10 candidates, I know that 6 maybe wasn't quite as crowded as it felt like back then. But I was successful in that. Had to go through a runoff because you have to get 50% or more of the vote. And I was successful in that. And then served, was up again in 2015, didn't have an opponent. So all 5 of the people that had run in that first election, I think, thought I was doing a great job. So they didn't challenge me. And then in 17, I did have an opponent and I ran a successful race. And then in 19, I had somebody file and then withdraw before the end of the filing period, and have served until May 1st when this election comes up. So now I'm running for mayor, basically to try to get some more of the things done that I've been working on at the council level for all of the residents of Fort Worth, and not just focused on the one district. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I got to where I am now and running for mayor.
Yeah. Well, cool. So what is your vision for Fort Worth? I know you mentioned the one district. So just Fort Worth as a whole, what are you looking for to change? You want to see what's your perfect Fort Worth?
Well, I mean, I share with folks that my background is in city planning. So I literally went to school and then started a career before I focused on my kids for a big chunk of time to plan cities. So in undergrad, I went to the University of California at Santa Cruz, and I have an undergraduate degree in environmental studies with an emphasis in policy and planning. And when I met my husband, he had just finished law school at SMU, and he moved down here from Michigan to get away from cold weather. He was looking for someplace warm, and he had started a job in Fort Worth, and I was finishing up undergrad and was planning to go to grad school. So when we decided to get married, I came here and didn't go to law school, which is what I'd originally thought about doing, but found a program at the University of Texas at Arlington that was specifically a master's in city and regional planning. So I got my master's and started working as a planning consultant, and worked for a number of cities throughout the Metroplex that all were smaller cities that didn't have their own in-house planning staff to do the role that like a larger city has staff do. And then also was hired to do a lot of other kind of plans for different smaller cities. So I've done work for Hearst, Euless, Bedford, North Richland Hills, Trophy Club, Crowley. I mean, you could name any city, and our consulting firm probably did something for them at some point. But when I started I started my family, and my boys are now 19 and 23. But when they were younger, I focused on them completely, and then was a full-time stay-at-home mom, which is definitely a full-time job. Spent a lot of time volunteering in their school and just being involved in all of that. But I really loved the work that I did before they were born. And I kept my certification of being a certified planner up, even though I was not making any money in planning. And I served on the zoning commission, like I said. And so I was able at that time to start to have some influence on Fort Worth, the community that I love and have lived in for 30 years. As a zoning commissioner. I also did a lot of volunteer stuff on different charrettes and stakeholder groups coming together to make decisions about parks and different amenities in our city. There's a park downtown called Heritage Park, and 12 years ago, I think it's been closed for a number of years. And 12 years ago, some of the stakeholders in the community started looking at what that would look like to open that back up again. And so I've been having the ability to have an influence on what Fort Worth has done for many years, but now we're growing really fast. Yes. And people point to that growth all the time and say, 20,000 people are moving here every year. And they look at the things that come from that growth that kind of are negatively impactful on our quality of life, like congestion of the roadways and neighborhoods that don't have all the services that they would like to see nearby, like parks and community centers and response times from police and fire and that sort of thing. And so representing District 9, which is kind of the core of the city, I've been able to really influence and have some input into how development occurs, and being that some of that development comes in and it's like infill development or adaptively reusing buildings that are historic and old and bringing new uses to those buildings, supporting businesses in those areas so that people don't necessarily have to drive really long distances to get to the services and things that they want in their community. I share with people in the neighborhood that I live in, I can walk to two grocery stores. There's a hair salon, a nail salon, a hardware store. All of that's within walking distance of my house. Now, it's not the most comfortable walk the entire way because there's not continuous sidewalks. And then I also have access to public transportation where I live as well. So I think that going forward, if we continue to grow the way we're growing and we sprawl out and have everybody further and further and further away from the services that they have, and the only way for them to get to the things that they want to get to is by driving in a car on a road that is quickly filling up with lots of other cars and people trying to get places, that's not a sustainable way to grow. So offering other modes of transit and other ways of getting around, I think would be beneficial. And, I share with people, it's not about telling people they can't drive. It's about offering other modes for people who want to take those other modes, and then you have less congestion for the folks that want to continue to drive themselves places. So just that whole focus of providing all of those services to people in whatever community they live in, whatever part of the city they live in, and the ability to connect all of those, and then making sure that people have access to jobs and access to education and all of the things that we can work side by side with other partners in the community, like our chambers and our school districts, to make sure that we have those things available to all the people that either choose to live or to work or to come and visit our city.
Okay. All right. I like it. Definitely. It sounds like a lot of things that you want to improve, and with this growth, that's so important right now. Just because the growth is insane. It is. And that's great. Everybody wants to live here because it's such an awesome place, right?
There you go.
So what in your journey, in politics and in public service and where you're at now, have you felt or ever experienced any like adversities being a woman in that, trying to get into leadership, decision making fields? Has that been kind of hard for you, or any experiences that you've had that you would want to share and kind of how you overcame those?
Yeah, I would say that the last time I really had any kind of obstacles just because of my status of being a woman was quite some time ago. I don't feel like that's held me back in my more recent endeavors of public service and being an elected official. I think that back when I was working as a planning consultant, I worked for many cities, and as the planner, I would convene the meetings where we were bringing together people from all the different departments of the various cities that we worked for to review the plans. And I had a little bit sometimes of challenges every once in a while with maybe men who didn't really like the fact that I was in charge of bringing everybody together, and a little bit of mansplaining going on sometimes. So I just have always tried to overcome that by being the most consummate expert in the room and just handling myself in the most professional way possible, and being incredibly prepared for whatever I choose to take on. I mean, my boss used to call it analyzing, with the emphasis on "and," that I would, every time I was preparing for a public meeting or, engagement meeting or a meeting with staff, that I would be so prepared. I would just read everything, and I would try to think of every contingency or every objection or everything that it could possibly be raised during that meeting, so that I was prepared to answer anything that might come up. And 9 times out of 10, none of the things came up that I was worried about that I was preparing for, but I think it's better to be prepared than not be prepared. And then also be willing to say, if you don't have an answer, I don't have an answer to that, but I'm absolutely willing to go and get those answers. But as far as running for office, in my first election, there were men and women in those 6 candidates. And I think the only thing that came up was just asking whether you had the ability to put full-time effort towards being the council representative, because it's not paid full-time. I mean, you get $25,000 a year, which is not enough to live on. So you clearly have to have some other source of income. And fortunately, my husband has that ability in our family. So I went from being a full-time stay-at-home mom that was not getting paid anything to getting paid the $25,000 a year. But that definitely is something that holds back other folks from being able to serve. And I think that's something we should look at, because I think we miss out on a lot of really fantastic people who would love to serve their city, but can't take that financial hit to do that. But as far as being a woman and running for office, I don't think that's held me back. I think sometimes people look at the obligations that women have if they have families, and imply that maybe they aren't up for the job because they have to be otherwise occupied. But I think that now more and more, there's more of a balance in families when it comes to taking care of children and that sort of thing. I focused on being a full-time stay-at-home mom at the time when my kids were little, because my husband was growing his practice of a new law firm, and it would have been a challenge for him. And the business that I did required meetings at night and all that kind of stuff. So I think there's a time and a season for things. You can't do all of the things 100% all of the time, but there's the ability to prioritize things. And I share a fun story about the first time I ran for office. My boys were 16 and 12, and my 16-year-old, somebody asked him, how was it having me otherwise occupied, not just focused on him and his brother? And he responded that it was glorious. So I think that my boys were definitely ready for a little independence and not to have their mom so 100% focused on their lives.
But I'm sure as they get older and look back, they will be so glad they did have mom there for all of that. So. That's a blessing.
Yeah.
So I think that's awesome that you were able to do that and did it so well. And so that's good. I'm glad that you aren't experiencing a lot of, maybe adversity or anything trying to get into a leadership role as this. I think that's great. And hopefully, society is morphing into respecting women and men regardless, in those roles. So,
well, I think when I got elected to the city council, we had 3 council members that were women and a mayor that was a woman. And that was the most we've ever had on the council before. And it continues to this day. There are 3 council women, and the mayor is a woman as well. So hopefully we can continue in that tradition and have a female mayor going forward.
Absolutely. I hope so. I think that's great. And so what would you, in kind of your journey and the things that you've learned along the way, what advice would you give women of any age that are thinking about maybe, starting a business or trying to get into a leadership role or doing something, out of the box besides just taking care of everybody else? What, what advice would you give them of things that you've learned or maybe wish you'd have known a long time ago or something like that?
Well, it's funny. People always talk about, life and work balance and making sure that you take care of yourself and all those things. And I will tell you, yes, that's all very important. Do I do that very well? No, I do not. I'm constantly being reminded. In fact, just before coming on to talk to you, I had an interview at 11 o'clock and I was like, I need to eat something before I get on this next call. And then, taking care of like working out and that sort of thing. I love yoga. And before pandemic times, I was doing yoga at public, in Sundance Square and other public places on a regular basis and trying to keep that, life and health balance going during a challenging time. And so I will tell people that they definitely need to do that. And I will tell myself, I definitely need to do a better job of that. That's for sure. When people ask me about like, what do I do? I want to be an elected official someday. I want to run for office someday. What advice do you have for me? I always share with people that I think it's better if you are out in your community doing the work in the community that is beneficial to the residents and the people that you live with. And then people will come to you and ask you to be someone in a leadership role for them, because you have proven that you are passionate about the community, have a heart for public service, and that's something that you want to do. I don't necessarily think, you need to major in political science or any of that kind of stuff to do this work. I think that it's better to have representatives who are just regular people. I mean, when people talk about, oh, politicians this and politicians that, I'm like, everybody who is a politician now, before they got elected, was just a regular person. And you see us at the grocery store and at local politics, you see us every day in your communities. And part of being close to the community and making decisions that are in the best interest of the community is continuing to have that relationship with the community that you represent. So I've gone out of my way in the last 7 years to constantly be in the community. As much as I would love everybody to be involved in the nuts and bolts of the city and know about zoning and come down to city council meetings and watch city council meetings on cable access and be all involved and engaged and understand about bond elections and all the things that we do at the city in order to deliver services. I know that's not really what everybody's passionate about. So I like to get out in the community, in the places where people are gathering on their own, like groups like yours, neighborhood associations, churches, all the different ways that people go about their daily lives, and just bring a little bit of the city into those spaces so that people have more of a say in what's going on in their communities, and we get the pulse of the people and what they would like to see going forward.
Oh, okay, absolutely. No, I think that's good. That's good advice to just go ahead, if it's on your heart to do that, go ahead and get out there and start doing it. There are a lot of ways to serve your community. So I think that's great advice. And you are right. You live here, you have a vested interest in it, and I think that's a great way to kind of do that. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that with us. And I know that you are a busy lady and you have a ton of stuff going on. Is there anything else that you kind of want to leave, anybody with, or how can they get a hold of you if they have questions or want to know what you've got coming up, or how can they reach you?
Yeah. Well, if they're wanting to reach me in my current role as there's the city council representative for District 9, my email at the city is just ann.zadeh@fortworthtexas.gov. And they can reach me there, and I'm happy to put them in touch with anybody that they need to be in touch with on the city side. But as far as my role in being a candidate for hopefully being the next mayor of Fort Worth, my website is just annzadeh.com. And an email address for there is just ann@annzadeh.com. So people can reach out to me by email or go check out the website, where I have a lot of information about my past service, platform issues, and we're adding to those. Because when I decided that I was prepared to be a candidate and run for mayor and be the next mayor of Fort Worth, I didn't make a big announcement that I was going to be. I just asked folks if they believed that that was a good step for me to take. And I got a lot of feedback from folks that was very positive as far as, encouraging me to run. And then also just bringing to me the concerns that they had. So we are adding to the platforms on the website as we get that information from folks. Just talking about the things that we would like to see for the future of our city, and hopefully bring everybody to the table to have a say in that. And I just appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today, and hope anybody will reach out that wants to talk to me further about anything.
Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. It's been so great hearing from you and about you, and I wish you the best of luck. I'm excited to see where this goes, and we appreciate everything that you have done to serve Fort Worth this far. So thank you so much for just being you and being here and your time today. So we
Thanks.
definitely appreciate it. And yeah, hopefully we'll get to talk with you again soon, and just hear about what all's going on. So thank you so much, Ann, for every.
No
You have
problem. Thank you.
Yes, you too. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
You too.